Using Caitlin Clark is being used as a pawn. This has been happening, and I think that's what's been such a shock for all of us. That right there. That's Sue Bird, WNBA legend, 4-time champion, calling out what everyone's been afraid to say out loud, and she didn't stop there. What she revealed on her podcast with Megan Rapinoe has sent absolute shockwaves through the entire league, because Sue Bird just did something that could potentially end her career. She exposed the truth about what's really happening to Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Let me be crystal clear about what we're dealing with here. This isn't just another controversy. This isn't just another case of a rookie getting hazed. What Sue Bird uncovered is far more sinister. She's claiming that accusations of racism are being weaponized, twisted into a justification for players to physically assault Caitlin Clark on the court. And the evidence? It's been hiding in plain sight this entire time. Many of you have been saying this for weeks in the comments. You've been connecting the dots while the mainstream media tried to bury the story. Well, Sue Bird just validated everything you suspected. And if you believe the story behind the story matters, if you think someone finally speaking truth to power deserves recognition, smash that like button right now. It tells us we're on the right track. And honestly, we need to know you're with us on this one. So, where did this nuclear bomb actually get dropped? Sue Bird sat down with Megan Rapinoe on their podcast, and what should have been a standard conversation about the WNBA season turned into something completely different. They started discussing a post-game incident involving DiJonai Carrington and a question from veteran journalist Christine Brennan. On the surface, it seemed straightforward. Brennan asked Carrington if she intentionally hit Caitlin Clark in the eye during a play. Now, you'd think that's a reasonable question, right? An on-court incident, a journalist asking for clarification. Standard stuff. But Megan Rapinoe immediately called it out. She said the question felt racist, that the very phrasing carried a deeply troubling racial undertone. And just like that, the conversation exploded into something much bigger. But here's where Sue Bird's insight becomes absolutely crucial. She didn't just agree or disagree with Rapinoe's assessment. Instead, she pulled back the curtain on something far more disturbing. Sue pointed out that while the question itself might have been legitimate, the way media outlets, especially ESPN, chose to frame and sensationalize it was the real problem. They weren't reporting news, they were manufacturing controversy. And then Sue Bird went even deeper. She started talking about the double standard that exists in how athletes are treated. When a black athlete gets involved in any kind of incident, suddenly it's not just a basketball play gone wrong. It becomes a character assassination. It morphs into a referendum on their entire personality. The scrutiny intensifies exponentially compared to what white athletes face for similar situations. Think about that for a second. Sue Bird, one of the most respected voices in women's basketball history, is openly stating that there's a racial bias in how stories get covered. She's not mincing words. She's not hedging. She's laying it out there for everyone to see. But let's filter out the noise and get to what really matters here. Because Sue Bird's most explosive claim is still coming. She stated unequivocally that this entire racism narrative has been weaponized, that players are now using accusations of racism as a shield, as cover, to justify physically targeting Caitlin Clark on the court. Let that sink in. We're not talking about competitive basketball. We're not talking about hard fouls that are part of the game. Sue Bird is claiming that some players are deliberately, intentionally going after Caitlin with personal grievances disguised as addressing racial issues. The cheap shots, the flagrant fouls, the unnecessary physical contact. It's all happening under the umbrella of this twisted racial narrative. And Sue Bird brought receipts. She pointed to specific incidents. Chennedy Carter's blindside hit on Caitlin. DiJonai Carrington's eye poke. These weren't basketball plays. Even Caitlin herself said it. That wasn't a basketball play. But because there's this ongoing narrative about racism and privilege, suddenly these attacks get minimized, dismissed, or worse, justified. Sue Bird went even further. She revealed that she's personally spoken with Caitlin Clark. She's gotten to know her, understand her journey. And here's what she discovered. Everything that Angel Reese and Chennedy Carter have been pushing about Caitlin's so-called white privilege. Sue Bird says it's completely false. According to Sue, Caitlin isn't some privileged athlete coasting on advantages. She's grinding just like everyone else. She's earned every single thing she's achieved through relentless work and dedication. The narrative that she's benefiting from systemic advantages simply because of her skin color. Sue Bird is calling that out as a lie. Now you were onto something when you noticed how aggressively certain players and media figures have pushed this privilege narrative. It never quite added up, did it? A rookie who broke records, sold out arenas, elevated TV ratings, and brought unprecedented attention to the league. Somehow, she's the villain. Sue Bird is confirming what many of you already knew. The story we've been fed doesn't match reality. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Sue Bird isn't saying we shouldn't talk about race. That's a crucial distinction. She's not dismissing legitimate conversations about racial dynamics in the WNBA. What she's saying is that the current approach, the weaponization of these accusations, is making everything worse. Instead of fostering unity and addressing real systemic issues, this twisted narrative is only creating more division, and the consequences are severe. Caitlin Clark is enduring not just verbal abuse, but physical targeting on the court. Players are using racism as a pretext to rough her up, elbow her, deliver cheap shots. The game has become personal in ways that have nothing to do with basketball. Sue Bird made it clear that whether these attacks stem from jealousy, resentment, or actual racist motivations against Caitlin being white and successful, the result is the same. A talented player is being targeted, and the league is allowing it to happen. Reading between the lines, Sue Bird is suggesting something even darker, that there might be a systemic conspiracy within the WNBA specifically targeting Caitlin Clark. Now, we're getting into speculation territory here, but Sue's carefully chosen words on that podcast paint a troubling picture. She's hinting that this isn't just individual players acting out. There's a broader pattern, a coordinated effort to diminish Caitlin's accomplishments and justify the treatment she's receiving. And this is where I need your voice. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think about Sue Bird's claims. Do you believe racism accusations are being weaponized against Caitlin Clark? Have you noticed the pattern she's describing? Because your perspective matters. The algorithm pushes conversations that engage, and we need this story to reach people who care about what's really happening in the WNBA. Now let's talk about what Sue Bird identified as the toxic segment within the Fever fan base. She was very careful with her language here, and we need to pay attention to that. Sue acknowledged that when we're discussing Fever fans, we're talking about a large, diverse group. Most are genuine supporters who love basketball and appreciate Caitlin's talent. But then there's a subset, a toxic element that's actively promoting hate speech, pushing racial agendas, and fueling division online. Sue made it clear these people are masquerading as fans. They're using Caitlin Clark's success as a vehicle for their own ugly prejudices. They're not actually supporting the player or the team. They're weaponizing her success to spread racism. And here's the critical part. Sue Bird is adamant that this toxic minority needs to be called out and separated from legitimate fans. But here's what makes this situation so complex and frankly so dangerous. Because this toxic element exists, it gives ammunition to people like Angel Reese and Chennedy Carter. They can point to these racist trolls and say, see, this is what Caitlin represents. This is the fan base she's brought to the WNBA. And suddenly, legitimate criticism of how Caitlin is being treated on the court gets dismissed as defending racism. Sue Bird is trying to untangle this mess. She's saying we need to simultaneously condemn the racist trolls while also protecting Caitlin from physical targeting on the court. these aren't mutually exclusive positions. We can acknowledge that some people are using Caitlyn's success for racist purposes, while also recognizing that Caitlyn herself is being unfairly victimized by players using racism as an excuse for violence. The WNBA community is buzzing about what this means for the league's future. Because if Sue Bird, one of the most respected ambassadors for women's basketball, is willing to blow the whistle this loudly, what does that tell us? It tells us the situation has reached a breaking point. It tells us that the league's handling of this controversy has been inadequate at best and deliberately negligent at worst. And now we need to talk about the Indiana Fever's response. Because while Sue Bird was dropping truth bombs on her podcast, the Fever organization was making moves that will completely reshape the franchise. Kelly Krauskopf was reinstated as president of basketball and business operations. They appointed a brand new general manager. This is a complete front office overhaul. And it's happening right now during the off-season. What does this mean? It means players are going to be moved. Roster spots will change. The team that takes the court in 2025 will look dramatically different from the squad that finished this past season in 6th place. And here's the part that has everyone talking: head coach Christie Sides. The coach who many believe badly mismanaged Caitlin Clark throughout her rookie season is reportedly on the chopping block. Sources suggest Caitlin will lose some close friends in this organizational shakeup, but she'll also see the departure of individuals who weren't supporting her the way a franchise player deserves. The Fever are making it crystal clear they're building around Caitlin Clark. This is her team now, and everyone else needs to either get on board or get out. Now, connecting the dots reveals something fascinating. The timing of Sue Bird's podcast and the Fever's organizational restructuring isn't coincidental. Multiple sources are whispering that the Fever front office is fully aware of what Caitlin has endured. They've seen the targeting. They've witnessed the physical abuse disguised as basketball plays, and they're responding with decisive action. The Fever aren't just changing personnel. They're sending a message to the entire league. You want to weaponize racism to justify targeting our franchise player? Fine. We're going to build a roster and coaching staff that protects her. We're going to create an environment where she can thrive without fear of being assaulted on the court while the referees and league office look the other way. And let's be real about what's at stake here. Caitlin Clark is the biggest draw in WNBA history. She's selling out arenas. She's driving television ratings. She's bringing casual sports fans into women's basketball. If the league allows her to be run out or seriously injured because they're too afraid to confront the weaponized racism narrative, the WNBA will suffer catastrophic damage. Sue Bird understands this. That's why she took the massive risk of speaking out. She's watched too many talented players get chewed up by systemic problems in the league. She's seen how racial dynamics can be twisted and manipulated. And she's decided that Caitlin Clark's situation is the line in the sand. This is where it stops. The broader implications here are staggering. If Sue Bird's claims are accurate, and frankly, her track record suggests we should take her seriously, then we're looking at a league-wide cultural problem. Coaches, referees, league officials, they've all allowed this weaponization to continue. They've stood by while Caitlin gets targeted. They've minimized legitimate concerns about player safety because addressing them would require confronting uncomfortable racial dynamics. But here's what gives me hope. The Fever are taking action. Sue Bird is speaking truth, and fans like you are refusing to let this story die. The mainstream sports media might try to bury this. ESPN might continue their sensationalized coverage that Sue Bird specifically called out. But the truth has a way of emerging, especially when enough people demand accountability. So where does this leave us as we head into the 2025 season? The Fever are rebuilding with Caitlin as the centerpiece. Sue Bird has exposed the weaponization of racism accusations. The league is going to have to respond, whether they want to or not, because ignoring Sue Bird isn't an option. Her voice carries too much weight, her legacy too significant. If you want to stay ahead of this story, If you want to know exactly what moves the Fever make this offseason and how the league responds to Sue Bird's explosive claims, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're going to be covering every development, every roster move, every statement from league officials. This story is far from over, and you're going to want to be here when the next chapter drops. The 2025 WNBA season is shaping up to be unlike anything we've ever seen. A completely revamped Indiana Fever team built around Caitlin Clark's generational talent. A league forced to confront how racism accusations have been weaponized, and players who will have to decide whether they're going to continue the targeting or finally let Caitlin compete on a level playing field. One thing is certain, Sue Bird just changed the conversation forever, and the Indiana Fever are betting their future on getting this right. We'll see you in the next one.